Alright, so I have a large sheet of paper, and you need to write your name on the back of it, and your code. A1, B1, or C1. Flip it over, and you want to first decide, do you want to work with your paper sideways, or do you want to work with your paper up and down? It is your decision. I want mine up and down, just because that's what I want. No other reason besides that. And you are going to look back onto your drawing activity where you expressed feelings using shapes and lines. So I have happy, I have angry, I have sad, and I have love. You want to pick which one you want to represent on a larger sheet of paper. Alright? It's okay if you pick angry. Because you know what? I think my angry box looks super cool. I like what I drew there. Even though I don't like to be angry all the time, I kind of like my artwork that I designed. Okay? You can pick sadness. It's okay. You don't have to pick happy. You don't have to pick love just because they're nicer emotions. Every emotion makes us a person, so they all are important for us to have. Okay, so I think I'm going to actually pick sadness to show on my bigger sheet of paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just lightly draw sadness. Okay, so I'm using this as a starting off point, so I'm going to try to recreate some of this and then add more to it because my paper is so large. So I'm going to draw my shapes. And you want to think about overlapping them, making some look like they're behind each other. Some are on top of each other. Alright, so I very lightly sketched out what I want to create. And now I'm going to go over it with oil pastels. And you want to pick colors that kind of help represent what you're trying to show. So sadness, I think of more blues and more violets. I don't think of really like yellows or things like that because I always think of happiness with those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start outlining my shapes, and I'll pick a few colors to get started with. And I'll kind of just set these up here and pick them as I see fit. And I'm tracing over my pencil marks. That's why I draw with pencil first, just to place things out to make sure I like what's going on in my picture. And you want to repeat shapes. Alright, so I have the basic design that I want, and I didn't trace exactly over my pencil marks, so I'm just going to go ahead and erase some of the pencil marks that I can still see, but you want to be careful not to get into that oil pastel because it'll start to smear. So be very safe. And now you want to pick certain areas to kind of color in solid with oil pastels, or you can create some patterns. So I could draw inside this shape. And maybe I'll color part of it in. When you color, you want to press pretty hard. You want to color so you don't see the white of the paper coming through. That's what's really cool about oil pastels, is we can color it so well that it almost will look like paint. No white coming through. These are not crayons. We can press hard and make it look beautiful. Okay, so I have finished with the oil pastels, and you might notice some of it got a little smeared just because you've been reaching your arm across it. That's okay. Once you feel you have a beautiful design, you feel you've really pushed yourself to make it the most beautiful you could make it, then what you're going to do is we are going to paint the background space, so all the white will get painted. We're going to use watercolor paints. And you want to still kind of think about your feeling, your emotion. So I'm still with sadness. I use blues and violets, and I'm still going to use blues and violets. Now, how are we going to do this? Are we going to have to paint in every little single shape? That would be kind of difficult. So we are not. The reason we're using oil pastels is because we can paint watercolor paint right on top of them, and it will not ruin it, because oil, the oil from the oil pastels will resist any of the water that goes on top of it. Oil and water don't mix together, so it's perfect to combine them in an art assignment. So what I'm doing is I'm getting my paintbrush wet, and I'm going to pick one color to start with. I'm going to pick my violet, and I'm going to just start painting on my paper. And look how I'm going right over the oil pastel. Make sure you hit your edges. And you don't want any white of the paper to be seen anymore. So you can keep this color, paint with it in another area on your paper. Maybe in a different direction. Notice how I'm slanting this a little bit. And always drag your paintbrush, never push it. Pull and drag. Flip, drag it up. Never scooch it, don't push. Okay, so I paint with that color. Now I can switch. So I rinse my brush, and I can pick a new kind of violet or blue. And I can paint with that. And it's okay if the colors blend into one another. That actually will look probably very pretty. Okay, once you feel you have painted a nice background, you can hold it with two hands and go put it onto the drying rack. Wipe your placemat off and dry it. Clean your brush and put your paint tray away. Alright, so this is a piece that I also created showing anger, so a different emotion. Notice how my colors are different, my shapes are different. And in the background I used the wet on wet technique with watercolor paint. So you can see how these can become totally different images based on your interpretation of emotion and your drawing technique and your painting technique. So here is our abstract or non-objective artwork that represents emotions.